Welcome to the new set. Temporary, I hope. But that got me thinking. Monday Night Raw has gone through its fair share of overhaul since its debut. So I figured that might serve pretty well as the topic of this episode. Because today... Thank you so much for the wonderful support over on Patreon, Jess K. On January 11th, 1993, we saw the first episode of WWF Monday Night Raw. Now, this original set featured a lot of old school favorite design elements, such as the red, white, and blue ropes, the blue apron, the blue staircase, and the blue mats around the ring. Yeah, that's an awful lot of blue for a show that's brand color is supposed to be red. Oh, but let's not forget about those classic metal guardrails. I miss them so much. Another interesting thing about this episode is that you'll notice that the place where the wrestlers come out of really isn't that prominent of a feature, since we're all used to seeing the place where the wrestlers come out from as being a big stage, which in some ways is an even grander focal point than the ring itself. Which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you think about it. But back during the beginning of Raw, wrestlers simply entered next to a neon WWF sign, but not the full neon entrance way that many of you were thinking of. That one happened for another several weeks. Oh, and also, during its initial episodes, Raw was similar to NXT in the early days, where it hailed from one fixed location, the Manhattan Center in New York City, New York. But unlike with NXT, this arrangement wouldn't last very long at all. Remember, during this time, the idea of a live weekly wrestling program on national television was unheard of, and as a result, there were a few wrinkles that needed ironing. As it turns out, a live 1 hour per week show in the Manhattan Center proved to be quite costly, so even though the advertised appeal of Monday Night Raw was that it was being done live, in order to cut costs, they had to pre-tape some episodes. And they also moved away from their home in the Manhattan Center relatively quickly, filming at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center in Poughkeepsie, New York from time to time. Then, the first episode ever filmed outside of New York State was in Bushkill, Pennsylvania in November of 1993, and the show went on the road from then on. Then, in 1995, WWF introduced their brand new entranceway, the giant Raw logo. And this also featured some very rudimentary pyrotechnics. Furthermore, this was also the beginning of Raw taking on a more edgier tone as they began moving away from their younger demographic as the little Hulkamaniacs from the 80s were now beginning to grow up. And also to better compete with WCW Nitro, which had now entered the scene. Then in 1997, we finally got the Titantron. Look at it. Isn't it glorious? But in addition to this, you also notice that by having the Tron, WWF also had to create another new set piece, the stage. Because if you're gonna have a big attention grabber like a giant movie screen, well, you probably ought to have a proper platform in order to display it. And that's exactly what WWF did, although it did have an added bonus for the wrestlers, because now they weren't entering on the ground floor, being eye to eye with the groundlings. Nope, now they were entering from an elevated platform instead, and went down a ramp as they made their way down to the squared circle, adding to that whole larger-than-life persona. In the time since, this has become so ingrained in our WWE consciousness that it's crazy to think that there was ever a time before the big screen was part of the show, and since its debut, it would change wrestling forever. Just think of all the wrestlers that we've seen go off that stage, or fall from the top of the Titantron, and not to mention how it helped a lot of people in the cheap seats see what was going on whenever there was something really specific being shown on camera. All this was made possible after the Titantron arrived. But this initial design for the big screen would receive minor changes here and there during the first few years of its existence. The side panels would get banners added before becoming screens themselves, an archway would be brought to the entrance, and let's not forget about the obligatory late 90s plug to show everyone that you had your very own website, when in 1999, WWF.com, download this, started appearing above wrestlers' heads as they entered. But going back to 1997, aside from the entrance getting a major upgrade, this year also saw another big change in December, because this is when we got the very symbol of the Attitude Era, the WWF Scratch logo. At first, this was done in conjunction with the New Generation logo and primarily for WWF Magazine, as it would be a while before it officially replaced the old block lettering logo. Also in 1997, WWF also switched Monday Night Raw rings to having all red ropes, and the show also switched to being known as Raw is War, signaling the full swing rivalry between World Wrestling Federation and WCW. And also, in response to the longer show of Nitro, WWF also started broadcasting a second show called Warzone immediately after Raw is War, but everyone, including the commentators, just counted this as one long 2-hour show. Oh, and of course, Pyro would become an even bigger part the show during this time. Then, a few other minor changes would take place. In 2000, the show would be moved to TNN, later renamed Spike TV, and in 2002, McMahon's house would have to get the F out, as World Wrestling Federation became World Wrestling Entertainment. Thus, minor tweaks to the set would have to be made in order to reflect these changes. Oh, and as this was happening, WWE.com then moved its way onto the aprons. But then, in that very same year, an even bigger change would occur as Raw unveiled a completely new set. This lasted till 2005 when the show was moved back to the USA Network and the side panels were changed upon the switch. And of course, the Spike TV logo was also removed. Oh, and also, during the Eric Bischoff reign, the announce team was moved to the stage, which was more reflective of the old WCW Nitro show. However, in 2005, they returned to being ringside, which is where I feel they belong. Going forward to 2008, Raw would receive an upgrade to go along with the show broadcasting in HD, as a brand new Universal set for both Raw and SmackDown would be featured, sporting brand new LED panels to show off the virtues of high definition. Then, in 2010, WWE would retire the all-red ropes and replace them with white ones. 2 years later, in 2012, Raw would get another boost for the set as it became an even bigger display of LED magic. 2 years after that, and WWE would change logos yet again. Following this, on March 23, 2015, and WWE would add even more LEDs with an LED apron on the side of the ring, which has appeared off and on again ever since. And then on July 25, 2016, Raw went back to having red ropes again and also went back to having the announce team sitting on the stage rather than ringside, and of course they also went to having another new set. But I do use the term new very loosely, since this particular Raw set looks suspiciously similar to the old 2012-2013 SummerSlam stage. But now this really didn't last very long, as about a month later, things would change yet again, this time featuring a more original looking stage design, which completely abandoned the old traditional Titantron for a new, more narrow curved one instead, as well as of course having even more LEDs, with an LED floor and LED ring posts. And finally, in September of 2019, the LEDs would completely take over, as the set was redesigned yet again, featuring this giant LED wall as the new Titantron, stage, and ramp all in one. And they also brought back Pyro, which was phased out in order to save money on the budget in 2017. Oh, and there was also the old school 25th anniversary of Monday Night Raw set, as well as, well, our current situation. Well, there you go, the many set designs of Monday Night Raw, but which one is your favorite? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, as well as subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much for being here, and as always, Dave knows.